Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov Chess Channel and welcome to another great game of the Global Chess League in 2023. We have here the clash of the titans between Vishy Anand and Levon Aronian. So this game is always a joy to watch because in the past I think we have seen so many great games between Vishy and Levon. Many great immortals have been played between Vishy Anand and Levon Aronian. So in my opinion always an epic tactical battle, and in this Global Chess League they played really amazing chess game. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Vishy opened with the move e4. The 11th response was e5, knight to f3, knight to c6. So we have bishop to b5. The Ruy Lopez, the Spanish game, is on the board. a6, the Murphy defense, and after move bishop to a4, we have reached the main line sort of with the move knight to f6, hitting the pawn in the center of the board. And after callousing, white can be challenged with this idea, knight takes e4, but then of course after rook to e1 and d4, the position will explode in the center of the board. White will eventually get the pawn back because black will simplify the game by playing the move d5, and it's I think now a playable game for both sides. So after move kingside callousing, here Levon Aronian played the normal idea, b5, hitting the bishop to b3, and here bishop to c5, playing aggressively also against this pawn on f2. In some tactical possibilities, knight to e4, knight to g4 could lead into complications around the square f2. So here Vishy goes into a beautiful aggressive line with the move c3, because if you play now the move knight takes e4, then d4 is the way to go. After something like bishop to b6, bishop to d5 is now a beautiful idea because you're attacking both of these knights. Bishop to c6 is a threat, then we can pick up the pawn on e5 immediately. The knight is hanging also, you have to make a reaction. For instance, if you play knight to f6, bishop to g5, then after something like e takes d4, rook to e1 prevents now simply black from callousing. So you lost maybe some material here, but I think with the activity white can be satisfied, and I think has a decent compensation for the lost pawn. So that's why after move c3, d6 was played by Levon Aronian. Levon fixes simply the structure in the center of the board with this idea. We have d4, the bishop drops back, and now we have bishop to e3. Again, you cannot pick up the pawn on e4 because you get challenged in the same tactical way with the move bishop to d5. Now it's even worse because both of the knights are loose on the board. So after move bishop to e3, here we have bishop to g4 by Levon, knight to d2, fixing everything, of course also connecting the knight to the defense of the knight on f3, but also to the pawn on e4. Callousing, h3, kicking with the bishop to h5, and now d takes e5, simplifying the game, releasing the pressure in the center of the board. So we have now the move d takes e5. If you play bishop to e3 here instead of d takes e5, then the game gets a little bit complicated, in which I think white should be slightly better because we'll simply pick up the knight here. You can pick up also the knight on d2. We will eventually take out here the bishop on d2, and now after something like bishop to f3, there is now this intermediate idea, f takes g7. You have to first react, and now we pick up the bishop, and okay, the knight is very powerful here because in one moment it will get on e5, but it can be still kicked away with the move f4. So it's not one of those positions where you can fix really the knight somewhere where it cannot be attacked by the bishop. Of course you want to fix it on the dark square here in these types of structures, but this is not such a position because, as we said, white has the flexibility to play the move f4 and still be aggressive. But it's a playable line, of course, for black for sure, also because the king is a little bit naked and vulnerable to black's attacks. But of course, after d takes e5, Vishy got challenged in this way, d takes e5. Now Vishy simply took the bishop on b6, provoked some structural weaknesses, which is of course now the double pawn structure on the b file, and now we have queen to e2, simplifying the game, of course also connecting the rooks now here on the first rank. So queen to c7, Levon Aronian also finishes his development, plays also the queen from the back rank and connects again the rooks in a good way. So now Now comes g4, a very aggressive move by Vishy Anand. The bishop drops back, and now knight to h4 with ideas, of course, maybe to fix the knight here on f5 and maybe getting some space advantages on the 5th rank. So knight to a5, hitting the bishop. We have now the move f3, which is in my opinion a good move here by Vishy Anand, fixing simply the structure. And you see now the bishop on g6 is now a little bit out of the game, and I think the bishop will have really tough time here to get back into the game, and you see that the bishop will become a huge positional, but afterwards also a tactical problem here for Levon Aronian, because the bishop is out of game. The knight in these types of structures, in this blocked out positions, in immobile pawn structures sort of, are having a better time because they have the flexibility to jump all over the board. They find eventually their spaces. They find eventually the best course on the board. Of course, the bishop can maybe get somehow later into the game, but it's a tough time for the bishop on g6 for sure. And in no way that Vishy is going to trade off this bishop, this knight for this bad bishop on g6. So we have here knight takes b3, and another good move here by Vishy. We have here a takes b3, which opens now the a file, creates of course also some tactical possibilities on the a file, because we have provoked now a backward pawn on a6. Knight to d7, we have now the move b4, which makes this a6 pawn even worse. Good positional move here by Vishy. We have rook from f to d8, rook from f to d1, competing of course on the d file. Knight to f8, knight to f1, searching for new opportunities, especially the d5 square is now a tactical object, of course. Knight to e3, knight to d5, and now after move knight to e6 that Levon played, Vishy sensed this in a good way, played now a beautiful knight to g2, not allowing this knight to an f4 to come in a tactical way. So that's why after move knight to f4, now he traded off the powerful black's knight on f4 for his bad knight on g2. But after e takes f4, still the bishop's position is not improved. The bishop is still paralyzed on g6, and I think in this scenario the knight on f1 is much better than the bishop on g6, because as we said, the knight will find eventually its way into the game. Knight to d2, maybe knight to b3, knight to d4 is also a decent score. Maybe later on knight to f5. But as I said, if you play knight to f5, probably black will immediately give up the bishop for knight. So I think when we cement the knight on d4, this will be a powerful position. Rook to d8, we have rook takes d8, and now a beautiful move by Vishy. Queen to d2, hoping to get the fully endgame stage, because if this game reaches the fully endgame stage, the bishop versus knight would be much better because of the bad bishop position. So we have queen to c7, rook to d1, occupying the only open file. Good again move here by Vishy, and now comes one of the critical moments of the game here. Levon Aronian, annoyed by his bishop on g6, tried to open the position somehow and played now the move h5, pardon. But this is not working, because here Vishy simply took. We have g takes h5, and the problem is now you cannot play bishop takes h5, because you get the beautiful tactic queen to d5. Both of these pieces are hanging, and the game is over actually for black immediately. So that's why after g takes h5, Levon Aronian has even a worse bishop now. The bishop is now cornered here on h7, and now there are even some back rank checkmate problems. So Levon has also to be careful. For instance, if you move maybe the rook from the back ranks, you can get even a checkmate, because the bishop is also covering now the escape route for the king. So really strange position here for black. So in the game we have queen to d6. Vishy is hoping to get the full endgame stage. As we said, nothing wrong with this idea, because in a potential fully knight versus bishop endgame, white should be much better. Queen to d6, rook takes d6. This pawn is weak now on b6, but we have here now rook to e8 by Levon Aronian. He's trying somehow to activate his pieces. This is the desperate try somehow to get some kind of a counterplay. Even if you play something like rook to b8 here to protect your pawn on b6, this is not working. As we said, there is a clear path for the knight to get it back into the game. You can maybe play the move f5, but the cool strategic idea here is to play e5. You don't want to play, of course, e takes f5, allowing this bishop to get back into the game. You play e5, for instance, white gets challenged in this way. King to f7, this wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you how also the rook on b8 move doesn't make sense. Now you get this idea, knight to b3 and then knight to d4 as promised. This is now the perfect square for the knight. In some lines you can get even some forks, but in my opinion the bad bishop strategy is simply working here. Maybe you can get the bishop back into the game, but then you have also some worries around the square f5. This pawn on g7 is weak, so many again tactical problems here for the Levon Aronian. So after move rook to d6, that's why Levon tried somehow to get pieces into the game, but of course the pawn on b6 is hanging. Again f5, a desperate try to get the bishop into the game, but now e5. This is the way to go. Paralyzing simply further the bishop. Really amazing bad bishop strategy here by Vishy Anand. Rook to e5, but king to f2 prevents now the rook to be active. So with this beautiful maneuvers, with these beautiful ideas, Vishy basically paralyzed all of the pieces of Levon Aronian. King to f7, trying to get the king into the game, but of course this is now the idea. We want to get the knight into the game, and when the knight comes on d4 or on, now even on c5, this is a perfect position for white. So here we have knight to d4 by Vishy Anand. Levon took now the pawn. We have now knight to e6, a beautiful move here by Vishy Anand, preventing this move rook to h3, because if that happens, first you get the check, you have to get the king on f7, and now you get the fork on g5. So this is the cool tactic that Vishy has prepared here. So knight to e6, of course we don't want to protect our pawn on h3, we want just to be more active with the knight. So king to h8, we have knight takes f4, good move, taking the pawn but also protecting the h3 pawn, and now also the rook is hanging. Again, Levon has to lose now an extra tempo. So rook to h6, h4, preventing also the move g5. We have now bishop to g8. Slowly this bishop is coming into the game, but it's a different story. The king is cornered. White's king is much better in the potential endgame, so it's simply too slow. It's simply a one-way ticket now in White's favor. Even if you play something like rook to h4 here, again you get the check, you can cover, but look at this, knight to g6 is working. So it's a perfect geometry all over the board. This knight is so powerful, so amazing here by Vishy Anand. So h4, we have a bishop to g8, we have h5. This move paralyzes now the rook, and also is not allowing here black to play the move g5 or g6. This g6 square is simply taken by the knights and pawns activity. We have king to h7, rook to d7, bishop to e6, rook to c7, bishop to c4 comes finally into the game, but it was simply too slow. Now Vishy has a clear path for the king. So you see every piece of white, there are not of course many pieces on the board, but every piece is in a good shape, is on an optimal square. Now we want to of course improve also the king. When the king comes on g5, it becomes a more better position for white. So rook to d6, king to h4, bishop to d5, king to g5, bishop to f3, king takes f5. So you see the position is collapsing, is falling apart here for Levon Aronian. King to h6, king to e5, rook to f6. Maybe here a better way is simply to go rook to d1, applying the Tarash rule, sort of getting the rook behind your enemy's pawns. It was maybe the last chance defensively here for Levon to do something, but he tried to be active with rook to f6. Now he got challenged in this way, knight to e6, bishop to g4, and now of course knight takes g7, which is of course taking out the pawn. And even if you try maybe to trade off this pawns in this way, then of course the rook is hanging, so you don't have time here basically to rack. That's I think the issue here. Black is always challenged. Black is always challenged by simple threats by Vishy Anand. So rook to f2 was played, finally hitting the pawn on b2, but again it's a little bit too slow. First the check, good move again by Vishy, because if you pick up the knight, then rook to g6 is in my opinion winning the game. White would continue with this extra pawn on the h file, would have also the king closer to this pawn. So here a potential trades of minor pieces wouldn't be a good continuation for Levon Aronian. So that's why he tried king to h7. We have h6. This pawn is making further progress. We have rook takes b2, rook takes a6, nothing dramatically changed. We have rook to h2, and again I think a potential trades of rooks here on h6 would not be of course in black's favor, because white's king is much closer to the action, will simply attack it. Even if you may be protected with the bishop, the knight can be included, of course, into the attack of the pawn. So trading off the rooks here is not an option for black. Black has to keep the pieces on the board and somehow try to complicate the game. So rook to f6, we have rook to h3, king to d4, protecting everything, bishop to e2, protecting the pawn. But now slowly but surely Anand is getting the knight more active, and of course is trying now to finally grab this pawn on b5. We have rook to h5, rook takes rook to h6, attacking the king. King goes to h8, and now knight to g6. You cannot take, of course, because first you're under check. You have to again react, and now after move knight to f4, the fork, Vishy Anand is, as we said, trying to simplify the game, train off the minor pieces, go for the pawn on b5. If that happens, if we get two pawns connected, two pass pawns connected, again, it's a completely winning endgame here for white. So in the game, rook to h4, that's why I'll play it here by Aronian, not allowing the trades of minor pieces. King to c5, we have bishop to c4, knight to e6, we have rook to h5, king to b6, king to g8. The king is cornered here. You cannot even attack the rook. That's the beauty about the setup. Rook on f6 and rook on h6. The king is simply out of game. Really beautiful strategic play by Vishy. Knight to d4, finally hitting the pawn. King to h7, rook to c6, bishop to f1, and now a beautiful move here by Vishy. Rook to c7. This move is allowing, of course, black to take the pawn, but now rook to c5 comes with the direct threat to pick up here the pawn on b5. If you play rook to c5 before this move, then of course rook to h6 comes with the check, and it's a different story. So it's not so good here for white. So that's why first sacrificing the pawn, now you play rook to c5, and now eventually you take out the pawn on b5. So rook to h3, knight takes b5, we have king to g7. Here Levon is finally trying to get the king into the game, but the pawns are marching. Here we have knight to d6, rook to d1, knight to f5, hitting the king, and now we have again this fork idea. As we said, if we trade off the rooks, or if we trade off the minor pieces, in any scenario, white should be winning this endgame. So that's why again Levon is trying somehow to complicate the game by keeping the pieces on the board. The only drawish idea that I see here for black is somehow maybe to sacrifice the bishop for these two pawns and then go into a rook and knight versus a rook endgame, in which okay, but maybe black can save the day. But Vishy is an experienced player here, of course, and you see now that he's not allowing this type of scenarios. He simply plays king to b6, after bishop to d3, he simply pushed the pawn further, king to e6, knight to d5 comes in an active way here into the game. We have king to c7, rook to a7 first to check, not a problem, king to c6, bishop, rook to a4, and now simple move b6 here by Vishy Anand, sacrificing now the pawn on c4, but there's nothing that can be done here against the potential progress on the b file, and actually in this position Levon Aronian resigned. So you cannot even get the rook back because of the knight activity here. If you take, of course, we'll simply take, rook takes d5. You can maybe try this one, but rook to b5 is winning the game. Nothing is working here for black. Maybe you can deliver a check, but now we can stand back, and there's no way that you're covering here the back rank problem. So great game by Vishy, great strategic play, knight versus bishop endgame, locking the bishop in the beginning. Risky ideas by Levon. You see how sometimes things can go wrong when you play aggressive with the bishop, because the bishop can be locked, and the Vishy locked it in an epic way. Eventually put his knight on a good score on d4, activated the king, paralyzed many pieces of blacks, and won this game. Fully deserved. A beautiful again strategic play by the former world champion and the legend and the tiger, Vishy Anand. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the Ruy Lopez for sure. If you want to see some other great games, here on my YouTube chess channel, check out my best chess games of all times, or maybe my commented chess games played by computer series. Here are the links of our two beautiful playlists, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.